Venezuela condemned the criminal and inhumane actions of the U.S. government against Venezuelan migrants. Palestinian health ministry experts warned of an unprecedented mental health crisis in the enclave due to the occupation's brutal violations. And in Palestine, the World Food Programme has warned of a drastic price rises in the Gaza Strip, with some products up by more than 200%. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Sunday, Venezuela condemned the criminal and inhumane actions of the U.S. government against Venezuelan migrants. The Venezuelan government denounced the persecution of thousands of Venezuelans in U.S. territory, as well as the expropriation of their personal property, businesses, bank accounts, and personal assets. Venezuelan officials said that many fellow Venezuelans, mostly working women and men, are being persecuted at their workplaces, schools, churches, and hospitals. Caracas recalls that many Venezuelans have left the country due to the blockade and economic sanctions imposed by Western countries, among them the United States. As part of these violating measures promoted by the United States, El Salvador received 238 Venezuelan migrants in its maximum security prisons, accused of allegedly belonging to the now disbanded Tren de Aragua gang. The Salvadoran government itself announced that it will receive from the United States close to $200 million a year to help finance the penitentiary system, following an agreement between both countries. In view of this fact, the Venezuelan government rejects the new attempt to link its migrant population with organized crime, aligned with what it describes as illegitimate persecution, driven by coercive measures imposed by the U.S. Elections were held this Sunday in the two polling stations in Tegucigalpa, the capital of Honduras, that did not take part in the March 9th elections. Voters at the Maximiliano Sagastume Basic Center and the National Institute of Agriculture were unable to exercise the right to vote due to irregularities in the delivery of electoral material. As a result, the country's National Electoral Council decided, in accordance with the electoral law, that the missing centers would have to carry out the processes this weekend, which, according to the Electoral Authority, was successfully completed this time. In Trinidad and Tobago, National People's Movement, the ruling party, presented its candidate for the 2025 general elections, while the current head of government, Keith Rowley, announced he will step down from office. Rowley becomes the first Trinidadian head of government to leave office, although he said he will continue to lead his party as political leader. This comes after he expressed his disagreement with the visa requirement applied by the United Kingdom to his country's inhabitants and stated that they should appeal to the London Privy Council as the highest court of appeal. In view of this situation, it will be the Minister of Energy and Industries, Stuart Young, who will assume the post of Prime Minister as of March 17th. Young will have to govern the destiny of the country until the next general election on November 28, 2025. In Guatemala, the people of Ixcan, Chiche are dismayed by the death of 3 fighters who defended the right to health of the marginalized. With a caravan, they paid tribute to the commitment they fulfilled until the end. Watch the following story by our correspondent Santiago Botón.
Una madre con su hijo en brazos.
A mother, with her son in her arms, joined the crowd that came out to dignify 3 social activists who died in a traffic accident while returning from the Guatemalan capital to demand the right to health for the Ixcanico people.
We return with sad and regrettable news that today leaves us with a great void within the people of Ixcan and within the entire committee of struggle.
Entre los fallecidos se encuentran
Among the deceased are a professional nurse and 2 community authorities. one of whom is Pedro Ricardo Gomez, re-elected on January 30th, who swore to defend his land and just causes.
It is
unthinkable that we should have to ask for projects. But hopefully the death of these three brothers will make our rulers aware of the neglect they have done to their people.
In Guatemala,
more than 40% of the population does not have decent access to health care. In the municipality of Ixquin, it is even more critical because 8 years ago, a hospital project was abandoned due to corruption, according to those affected.
What we want is the continuity of the hospital, that it be completed because we want dignified care for our population, and that was our objective for the trip.
The fight for the right to health care, denied by the state, is only part of a long battle that several of the more than 200 marginalized communities have been waging since they settled the land more than half a century ago, they say.
We have this history of struggle and resistance, and this is the reality of Primavera, that we take these steps in defense of human rights, for the common good of the community and of the municipality and at the national level.
The death of these three health martyrs coincides with the 43rd anniversary of the first massacre perpetrated by the army in Ixquin. The Cuarto Pueblo massacre marked the beginning of the scorched earth policy in Guatemala. The army killed more than 400 people, including children, the elderly and pregnant women in the village of Cuarto Pueblo Ixquin, on March 13th and 14th, 1982.
Santiago Botón, teleSUR Norte de Guatemala.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back. Palestinian Health Ministry experts warned of an unprecedented mental health crisis in the enclave due to the occupation's brutal violations. Recently, both Palestinian and Israeli human rights organizations condemned the kidnapping of two children by genocidal forces after the murder of their grandmother. Sama Jaber, former head of the ministry's mental health department, says that such incidents are repeated daily and have wreaked havoc on the mental health of Gazans, especially children. The expert says that these scars extend across generations. In Palestine, the World Food Programme has warned of a drastic price rises in the Gaza Strip, with some products up by more than 200%. The program, which is affiliated to the United Nations, has pointed out that the blockade of humanitarian aid is the main cause of this situation and that women and children are the most affected. It called on the genocidal Israeli authorities to prioritize the needs of the civilian population and allow vital humanitarian aid into the country for the Palestinian people. The agency also warned of the critical food situation in Gaza and appealed to the international community for €242 million to continue its operations in the region for the next 6 months, both in Gaza and the West Bank. In Yemen, the government authorities report the re-establishment of the naval blockade exclusively for Israel. Yemeni Foreign Minister Jamal Amer said that the decision was reinstated because of the genocidal regime's refusal to implement the ceasefire agreement reached in Qatar. He stressed that the naval ban includes the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and the Gulf of Aden, while stating that any Israeli vessel that crosses the declared area of operation will be prosecuted. He reiterated that the ban will remain in place until the crossings with Gaza are reopened and humanitarian aid is allowed in. In Palestine, a charity in the northern Gaza Strip has been distributing hot meals to war-weary Palestinians during the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan as Israel continued its blockade of the coastal enclave.
Palestinians in Gaza are struggling to feed their families as Israel has maintained its blockade of Gaza for the past 2 weeks. Many have turned to charities to get hot food for their children. Residents, most of whom live in tents near or on top of their destroyed homes, are suffering water shortages, food shortages, and shortages of everything since the siege began.
In light of many crises, the closure of crossings for 2 consecutive weeks, we suffer greatly from a shortage of flour and a shortage of food. As you can see, now we get our daily sustenance from the charity. In the past, we did not depend on charity in any way, but today we were forced to come to the charity due to the scarcity of materials. Materials are very scarce. There's a shortage of water, a shortage of food, and a shortage of everything.
Israeli genocide has left most of Gaza's population of over 2 million dependent on international aid. In this context, aid groups have expressed concern about the diminishing gains made during the 6-week ceasefire to avert famine in parts of the Strip, while those still in refugee camps express concern about the lack of even the simplest things.
It is a very difficult suffering. We used to live an average life, but thank God it was much better than now. Now a person suffers with how to provide for his family, how to spend on his children. There is no work, no housing like before, no care, no food, no life requirements. Even simple things like vegetables and fruit are no longer available. The simplest things that were in our lives are no longer there.
The first phase of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas ended a fortnight ago, but the lull in fighting has held for now, though tense. Israeli forces have withdrawn to buffer zones inside Gaza, and hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians have returned to northern Gaza, and hundreds of aid trucks were entering daily until Israel cut off supplies to the territory's 2 million inhabitants a fortnight ago, re-exposing the inhabitants to various risks.
In this context, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, has sounded the alarm over the dire situation in Gaza, where hospitals are rapidly running out of essential medical supplies. The World Health Organization, WHO, reports that the health sector is severely damaged, with 84% of health facilities either damaged or destroyed. This, along with the Israeli blockade, has led to critical shortages of medicine, medical supplies, and skilled personnel. The ongoing conflict has resulted in significant trauma-related injuries, with over 24,000 people suffering major life-changing injuries by September 2024. The lack of access to essential services, including maternal and child health care, has worsened the humanitarian situation, with reports of increased malnutrition and related deaths, particularly among children and the elderly. Another consequence of the Israeli blockade is a desperate struggle to secure regular supplies of fresh water, with many waiting for days to fill makeshift containers. The situation has become increasingly dire as water aid trucks arrive, drowning long queues of people who often walk considerable distances to obtain this essential resource. Gaza relies heavily on external water sources, including the Mekorot water line from Israel, which is often threatened with closure. This has heightened fear of a major water shortage, exacerbating health risks due to contaminated water.
We are suffering from the issue of drinking water and salty water. We wait for 3 or 4 days waiting for the truck carrying filtered water to come. We see a truck at the end of the street, we run towards it. We are waiting on the road since the morning waiting for water. We are suffering. One water is filtered and another is not. We are struggling, and every day we are looking for a solution for the water problem. It's the month of Ramadan. We need to eat, drink, and we want to break fast on good water, not bad one. The salty water had really tired us. They say it is filtered, but it turns out to be salty. Thanks God today a water truck came, and we pray for God that we get one every day.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, a special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The head of the Chinese People's Army Eastern Theater Command, General Lin Yingyan, assured that they were ready to crush any attempt to endanger national unity, sovereignty, security, and the safeguarding of the country's interests. He made these remarks on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of the application of the anti-desertion law. He recalled that the command has focused on achieving a centenary goal set by the Communist Party of China and, in this sense, has vigorously deepened the reform of the Army National Defense. The senior official was responding to the remarks made by the leader of the Chinese island of Taiwan, who reminded him that if he persisted in his separatist ideas, he would be met with the full force of the command and the support of the Chinese people. In North Macedonia, the government declared 7 days of nationwide mourning for the civilians killed in a fire at a nightclub in the town of Kokani. According to the authorities, the death toll amounted to 59 people and more than 155 injured who were taken to health centers. They also informed that so far only 35 of the deceased have been identified, among them a policeman who was carrying out control of narcotics and illegal psychotropic substances in the premises. The authorities said that they are still investigating and inspecting the place to determine the causes of the fire, although it is believed that it was started by the use of fireworks.
I was there. I was witnessing all the situation when the children and the dead were pulling out. What can I say to you? We're a small place. This tragedy, what has happened to us, will not recover the generations. Kokani is already a dead town. I have a relative's son who died, my godfather's son, my neighbor's children from school. We all are feeling like all our children have died. It was terrible. Hundreds of people were lying down. We were checking the pulses. First, we inspected who had a pulse to save them, to be put in the car and transferred. Those who had no pulse, it was clear they were set aside. It was terrible, a mass of people. Crushed, some of them were suffocated from the smoke. Most of them have died due to the burns, some from the electric shock from the cables. Because the cables were put out, those were our children. Our children have died.
In Ivory Coast, a famous painter dedicates his talent to teach and inspiring young artists in order to find their own creative path. Let's see more.
Aboudia, un reconocido pintor de Costa de Marfil.
Aboudia, a renowned painter from the Ivory Coast, transmits his knowledge and teachings to a new generation of artists, especially to children, in order to guide them to find their own creative path and their first inspiration on canvas. Although he is now one of the most renowned artists, both in his country and internationally, his beginnings were not easy, facing resistance and difficulties along the way, mainly from his family.
De adolescente quería ser pintor. Mi padre no quería.
When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a painter. My father didn't want to, but that's life, because every father wants his son to succeed. You might think that painting is not present in our cultures, but African art has strength through sculptures, batik loincloths, and many other things. Even so, the father who was a teacher wants his son to be a teacher like him, because in Africa, at that time, when you said you wanted to dedicate yourself to art, they said, you are a failure, and all that, but not in a bad way.
Y todo eso, pero no en el mal sentido.
Tras superar las dificultades y seguir su camino.
After overcoming difficulties and following his path, Abudia transformed his teenage rebellion into an outstanding artistic expression. With a pictorial style called naive, which includes works inspired by street children, the artist shows great affection and empathy for disadvantaged infants, while also urging the authorities to pay more attention to them.
Podría decir que lo que hace reconocible mi estilo.
I could say that what makes my style recognizable is this naive side, of being older and working like a child. I think that's what it is. It gives it a special touch. I have also worked with underprivileged children, street children, the Nuchi, in Ivorian slang, which is also spoken by street children.
Que también hablan los niños de la calle.
Hoy en día este pintor se encuentra
Today, this painter is among the best-selling artists at auctions worldwide, according to market analysis, as well as the contemporary artist who sold the most canvases in 2022. Moreover, important galleries in Paris, London, New York, and Lagos are interested in his works, a very different reception from the one he received when he exhibited his first paintings in the Ivorian city of Abidjan in 2000.
And with this cultural moment, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.